Welcome back to the Modest Wealth. Imagine someone pulling into a restaurant parking lot in a car that costs more than their parents' first house, stepping out in clothes chosen as carefully as a business pitch, glancing at a phone full of polished proof that life is going well. Most people see confidence in that image. They see arrival. They see a person who has figured something out. But there is another possibility that is quieter and more common. What looks like success is sometimes a performance built on depletion. The money is real, or at least partly real. The signals are intentional. The effect is convincing. But underneath the image is a constant bill being paid in cash, attention, and inner peace. That is the tension behind this video. We live in a culture where looking successful is often treated as a shortcut to feeling successful, and where visible proof can feel almost as important as the life it is supposed to represent. So people buy the symbols first and hope the feeling will follow. Sometimes it does, for a moment. But often the image becomes a hunger of its own. It asks to be maintained. It asks to be upgraded. It asks to be protected from silence, from ordinariness, from any sign that you may not be as far ahead as you seem. The hidden cost is not only that performance spending drains money faster than most people expect, it is that the performance itself changes your relationship with money. Once money becomes a stage prop, it stops being just a tool for freedom or stability. It becomes a language for reassurance. You do not simply use it to improve your life. You use it to send messages to peers, to strangers, to old versions of yourself, to people you grew up around, to the invisible jury you carry in your head. That is why this topic matters. The real danger is not a single luxury purchase or an occasional indulgence. The danger is building a life where the appearance of success quietly becomes one of your fixed expenses. Because then the spending is no longer about enjoyment. It is about identity maintenance. And identity maintenance is one of the most expensive hobbies people ever take on. It creates a strange trap. The more you need life to look impressive, the less room you have to actually live it on your own terms. Most people do not set out to become performers. They start with something more understandable. They want relief. They want dignity. They want to stop feeling behind. They want evidence that their effort is paying off. Maybe they grew up watching money determine who got listened to and who did not. Maybe they spent years feeling invisible, underpaid, underestimated, or ashamed of what they could not afford. So when money finally begins to arrive, the desire is not only to be comfortable, it is to erase an old feeling, to prove in a visible way that the old story is over. The nicer apartment is not just about better lighting. The expensive dinner is not just about taste. The designer bag is not just about craftsmanship. These things can become emotional declarations. A way of saying, I am no longer that person. I matter now. I made it out. That is what makes the pattern so easy to misunderstand. From the outside, it looks like vanity. Sometimes it is. But often it is more vulnerable than that. It is compensation mixed with hope. A person believes that if success becomes visible enough, it might finally feel secure. But visible success is a poor, long-term container for emotional security because it depends on being seen, repeated, and confirmed. The relief it offers is real but unstable. A raise feels good until someone else's lifestyle resets your baseline. A purchase feels satisfying until it becomes normal. A symbol of arrival quickly becomes a standard to maintain. And now the problem has changed shape. You are no longer just earning for your needs, your future, or even your pleasures. You are earning for the image. You are earning to avoid the embarrassment of seeming to move backward. You are earning to keep a story alive. This is where money stops feeling like progress and starts feeling like pressure. Not because the person is foolish, but because performance changes what money is asked to do. Instead of buying time, it buys proof. Instead of reducing noise, it often creates more of it. A person begins checking not just whether they can afford something, but what it says if they cannot. They begin organizing life around optics that no spreadsheet can fully justify. A cheaper choice may be financially smart, but emotionally costly because it feels like shrinking in public. A quieter life may be more sustainable, but harder to inhabit because it does not produce the same social signal. This is why so many high earners still feel financially tense. Their income may be large, but so is the emotional role assigned to it. And when money is carrying your lifestyle, your self-image, and your social positioning all at once, it can disappear into performance faster than anyone around you realizes. You can see this clearly in the young professional who gets the first serious salary bump after years of scraping by. Nothing about their desire is irrational. They are tired of feeling small. They want a better neighborhood, better clothes, better travel, better restaurants, better everything. So they upgrade quickly, not recklessly, at least not by the standards of the people around them, but consistently. The apartment gets nicer. The car payment appears. The social life becomes more expensive because their peers live in a way that assumes flexibility most people do not actually have. Soon they are making more money than they ever imagined, yet somehow feel more trapped. Why? Because each upgrade brought not just pleasure, but expectation. Their new normal now needs protecting. What once felt like freedom begins to behave like overhead. And the cruel part is that from the outside, it looks like they are thriving. That image makes it harder to admit that the life they built to signal arrival has quietly reduced their margin for error. Or think of the small business owner who begins doing well enough to attract attention. At first, the success is practical. Better cash flow, a growing client list, some genuine breathing room. But over time, another temptation appears. The need to look as successful as the business is becoming. The office gets fancier than necessary. The branding gets more luxurious. The car starts functioning as a mobile press release. Dinners, trips, memberships, wardrobe, even casual habits begin to communicate a message. This is a person winning at a high level. And maybe some of it helps commercially. But often, the line between useful signaling and personal theater becomes blurry. The owner starts spending not only to support the business, but to support the identity of being the kind of person who runs a successful business. That is a subtle but costly shift, because now every quiet season feels dangerous, not only financially, but symbolically. It threatens the image. And once the image becomes part of the operating model, peace gets harder to keep. There is a broader version of this pattern in public culture too. Entire industries now run on the monetization of visible aspiration. Social platforms reward lifestyles that photograph well. Consumption has become communicative. You are not merely buying the thing, you are buying its usefulness as a social signal. That does not mean everyone is fake. It means modern life makes performance unusually easy to normalize. People begin mistaking aesthetic coherence for financial health and attention for stability. But a polished life can hide a very fragile structure underneath. Real wealth often looks quieter than people expect, because it does not need to announce itself every day. The life that performs best in public is not always the life that feels best in private. And that is the beginning of the clearer truth. When success becomes something you must constantly display, it can start consuming the very freedom it was supposed to create. The deeper problem is not luxury itself, it is dependency on the signal. A nice object can be enjoyed lightly. A beautiful home can genuinely improve daily life. Good design, comfort, quality, convenience, none of these are moral failures. The issue begins when visible success stops being a preference and becomes emotional infrastructure. At that point, the spending is no longer supporting life. Life is supporting the spending because the spending is supporting the self. That is why the cost is hidden. It does not show up only as a number on a statement. It shows up as background tension, as the feeling that your life has become expensive to maintain, not because your needs are extraordinary, but because your image is. And image is a hungry thing. It adjusts quickly, then asks for reinforcement. Once this pattern takes hold, people often mistake the pressure for ambition. They tell themselves they are simply motivated, disciplined, pushing forward. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they are running a private protection racket for a persona they no longer feel free to disappoint. The house must fit the identity. The travel must fit the identity. The school, the watch, the neighborhood, the holidays, even the casual way money gets discussed around friends, everything starts serving a story. And the more coherent the story becomes, the less permission you feel to step outside it. This is where performance quietly becomes imprisonment. You are no longer deciding what is worth paying for based only on usefulness or joy. You are deciding based on what cannot be seen to disappear. That is why performing success drains peace as much as money. It makes every financial decision carry social meaning. It turns simplification into a threat. It makes restraint feel like retreat. A cheaper option may save money, but if your identity is tied to projection, it can feel emotionally expensive. A quieter choice may buy you margin, but it can also make you feel exposed, as if other people will notice that the volume has dropped. This is one of the quiet lessons at the center of the modest wealth. Some of the best financial decisions reduce noise, not just cost. They remove the need to keep proving that your life is going well. They lower the emotional rent you pay to stay convincing. And that kind of reduction is not deprivation. It is relief. What many people get wrong is thinking the price of looking successful is mostly financial. It is not. The financial cost matters, of course. Too much visible lifestyle can eat savings, delay independence, shrink flexibility, and leave high earners oddly fragile. But the deeper cost is psychological. Performance makes you easy to impress and hard to satisfy at the same time. Easy to impress because your sense of progress becomes tied to visible upgrades. Hard to satisfy because visible upgrades lose their emotional charge quickly and must be replaced, refreshed, or outdone. The result is a life that looks elevated but feels restless. Not because the person is shallow, but because external proof is a poor, long-term substitute for internal steadiness. That is why so many outwardly successful people feel privately tired. They are not only working to fund their lives, they are working to protect a standard that has become symbolic. And symbolic standards are rarely stable because they depend on comparison. Comparison to friends, peers, old classmates, competitors, neighbors, family expectations, industry norms, social feeds, and the imagined judgment of people who are not thinking about you nearly as much as you fear. The performance machine runs on anticipation. It asks, what will this say about me? What will it look like if I scale down? What does it mean if I choose the simpler version when I could choose the louder one? Over time, this turns ordinary financial behavior into identity theater. A more mature reframe begins by separating success from display. Success is not the ability to generate admiration on demand. It is not the ability to look expensive in motion. It is not even the ability to afford nice things without flinching. Success, in a deeper sense, is when your money serves your values more than your insecurities. It is when your lifestyle has enough room in it that you can choose what is sensible without feeling humiliated by your own restraint. It is when the gap between what you have and what you need to prove begins to close. Enough is not a number alone. It is also the moment when your life stops needing applause to feel legitimate. This is why invisible wealth matters so much. It protects things that performance often destroys: optionality, privacy, flexibility, and emotional quiet. The freedom to leave a draining job. The ability to survive a bad year without panic. The option to take less glamorous work that fits your life better. The dignity of making decisions that are invisible to everyone except the person who has to live with them. A peaceful life may be richer than an impressive one, not because impressiveness is evil, but because peace compounds in a way image never does. Image must be maintained. Peace can be inhabited. The alternative is not to reject all nice things or pretend appearances have no place in human life. People will always signal. Culture will always reward certain symbols. Beauty, taste, comfort, and celebration all have a place. The point is narrower and more important. Do not build a life where the appearance of success becomes one of your largest emotional obligations. Because then, money stops being a source of resilience and starts becoming fuel for performance. And performance is exhausting when it becomes your default mode of existence. A quieter kind of success looks less dramatic, but it holds up better. It looks like having room in the budget that nobody claps for. It looks like choosing sustainability over spectacle. It looks like buying things you truly enjoy without making them carry the burden of proving your worth. It looks like being able to downshift without feeling erased. It looks like a life where your spending is not constantly auditioning on your behalf. That kind of success rarely gets the same attention. It does not always photograph well, but it tends to age better, sleep better, and bend without breaking. In the end, the hidden cost of looking successful is that it can keep you working for a witness long after you have earned the right to live for yourself. And that is too expensive a trade, no matter how polished it appears from the outside. So here is the question worth sitting with. How much of what you call success is genuinely making your life better? And how much of it is simply helping your life look convincing to other people? If this gave you something to think about, consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who might need it, and subscribing to The Modest Wealth for more essays on money, behavior, and the quieter forms of a rich life.